had a place at university to study environmental sustainability. Didn't do that. Had another year out. And sort of worked on my portfolio a little bit and got something together. And kind of by chance, really, a friend of mine was had applied to go to Falmouth to study photography. And I kind of thought, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll try and do that. Went really late, managed to get a place. And yeah, showed them my travel work basically. And the course that I actually ended up sort of taking was, it was actually a new course the year I started, so it was called Press and Editorial Photography. And it really had quite a photojournalism focus, which suited the sort of work that I'd been doing, so that was kind of good and meant I got on the course. I'd actually applied for the Fine Art Photography course, which is a very old and like well-respected and kind of fine art-based photography course. But that was full, which was a great thing. I don't regret, because this new course was really designed to, in a way, do what this does. Get people into the industry and you know, try and prepare you like as much as possible for how it's really going to be, because yeah, there was a lot of people that just sort of kept doing these courses and staying there and not doing anything with it necessarily. And so this course was born, it was a great course. And I mean, I'm kind of a little bit anti-institutional in terms of the formalities and things, but it was very good and it really set me up well. In the same way as here, there was a lot of external lecturers and speakers who were working in the industry. It was, yeah, I had really good access to people. So, but I guess then, yeah, I mean, obviously you experiment a lot and do different things, as we sort of discussed. But yeah, my kind of main focus for, especially in my final major project, was portraiture, but from a documentary standpoint, which is interesting because it's kind of nothing like what I do now. And anyway, so yeah, did that. That was great. Did really well. Had a little exhibition up here. That was all good. And then I kind of went home back to Somerset, where I grew up, for a few months, and then yeah, eventually realised that I needed to be in London if photography was going to be a thing. And yeah, haven't really looked back. But I guess I started out assisting quite a range of photographers. So that's, I guess, a case in point. Yeah, there are, I think, a few people who never really existed, and that's great, and they can be catapulted into the industry based on a really strong portfolio. You know, people like Juno Calypso, like, you know, people like that who are, you know, they really do have a very strong style initially, and they can then draw on that, and actually it works in the commercial world. I didn't really have a specific focus, so for me assisting was a natural route. So spent maybe 5 or 6 years assisting, and yeah, initially quite a range of people, portraits, celebrity, kind of fashion stuff, a mix. And then I kind of got in touch with some old friends of mine who actually had studied with me but were a few years ahead, who were shooting still life. And yeah, I'd never come across it. I'd missed it. I'd missed that lecture. Yeah, I started working for these guys, and really just sort of enjoying the technical process, I guess, a lot initially. Very controlled, kind of considered ways of working, working with different camera formats, like large format and medium format. And yeah, and I guess it was the first point where I sort of was aware that there was kind of teams. So, you know, working with set designers and various kind of people like that. Yeah, so that was interesting, and it sort of captivated me a bit. And so I kept working with those people, and I guess then started to test and do my own thing within that kind of, well, within still life. And I guess, yeah, took a few years and a lot of bad shoots, and it started to come together a little bit. And I guess so. Graduated in 2010. So maybe spent 6 or so years assisting. I mean, I was the great thing about that course that I did, it really encouraged to shoot properly, like shoot live briefs, whatever it was, but shoot live briefs from day one on the course. So I was kind of comfortable working for clients, or working for editorial clients at least. And yeah, so gradually started to do that, but as it sort of works with the higher up the kind of prestige of who you're shooting for, you know, you get given a really small project, might get a page, and gradually build on that. But I'm not going to show you a full chronology because it'd be incredibly boring and I'd look really bad. But I'm going to kind of just, and if anyone's got any questions as we're going, feel free to just shout, and I'll, because sometimes you forget, well, I'd forget if I got to the end and had to ask, so feel free. So yeah, I'm going to show you this. Initially was kind of my current portfolio. So it's all pretty much self-initiated work that I would kind of call my creative portfolio. And this is kind of what I would show. It's kind of what I've been showing agents. It's kind of what I would show. What I show people to get the kind of work that I want. As you were saying, you know, it's quite nice to do things that are led by you, and I've got a firm belief that you only get the kind of work that you show to people. So I've kind of, up until fairly recent, maybe a year or so ago, I was showing people a lot of what I thought they wanted to see, you know, watches and different kind of products, that showing that I could shoot them, you know, and so demonstrating a technical capability, which is very important, and don't get me wrong, it's still very important, but it's just that I'm not choosing to show that as a presentation of myself. So, but I will show you some of that stuff after this. But so I'll just sort of, I'm gonna have to, is this going to work? I'm going to have to do that. Maybe that, no. Okay, right. So actually, saying that, this was actually kind of a commission, but it was a very free, open commission. So this was actually for Audi Business, which is like a business magazine for Audi that they kind of distribute internally to their kind of clients and stuff. But it was actually a conceptual piece, so this is why it's actually there, because although it's actually a lamp, it was nothing to do with the brief or the client. It was a brief about 5G connectivity, which is this new technology that we're going to get. Although I think it's not really going to be for consumers; it would be for the emergency services and things like that. Anyway, it was to illustrate that. This was a cover that they didn't actually use because it was a little bit ambitious for suiting their house style. But these were two that were featured. But yeah, so incorporating some products, but it was very much, we just called them in, and it wasn't kind of like a specific thing where you must shoot this. It was, just a kind of nice way of mixing the two worlds of kind of sculpture, set design, and some kind of interesting products. So, so this is actually a speaker, this sort of
it's like a ribbon
thing, and these are, so they're kind of like it's like a really fine mesh tube that is kind of folded in sculpture. So it's a sculpture element, but so those two different things, and then the mirror is actually a product. But,
and from the brief, would you be coming up with that concept yourself, or would you be using the set designing routine?
Yeah, so I pretty much always work with a set designer, and I'll maybe go into a bit more depth into that a bit later on. But yeah, it's really important. Again, it was kind of something I didn't realise until I started working with other people, that, you know, it's really nice, and I find it really rewarding. It's like you don't have to be by yourself in a dark room the whole time. Some of the time, but, so I will. It totally depends on the brief, but obviously for self-initiated briefs, I will. 9 times out of 10, I will have a creative discussion with the set designer, and we'll come up with ideas together. But actually, a lot of what I end up actually physically shooting kind of happens on the day. We'll create a framework, and then, you know, like with this, for example, we really didn't know what we were going to do. We just had a bunch of different materials, and we had some products that we didn't have to use. We could or couldn't use. So, yeah, it's quite organic. But then sometimes it will be very prescribed. So if it, and that's sort of, I guess, what I'm trying to avoid shooting those kinds of briefs really now. When things are very set, and yeah. So just gonna, didn't feel like that should be there, but it is. So yeah, this actually was something that we just kind of added on to the end of the shoot, and it was going to be a concept that was for. So I shot a couple of projects for the Welcome collection. So like the science photo. No, it's not the science photo. Like that's a very different thing. But yeah, the Welcome collection. So on Euston Road, it's science-based information. But actually, we were going to use this concept, but we actually ended up. We'd already shot nothing, so we wanted to do something with it. So we did another shoot, the set designer and I. And yeah, so it was purely an experimental exercise, but I haven't put these out yet either, by the way. So they may be included in an exhibition that may be happening soon. I'm not sure. But this was actually another one of. So it's the Mosaic. Mosaic is the online magazine platform for the Welcome collection. So names and terms of people. So they have really interesting briefs. So they're like science, and it's like quite some. So the briefs have been. The last one I did was about catheters, and the one before that, this one was about trichomania. I can't really say it very well. Trichomania. It's where you pick and pull your skin, and it's a really quite a common disorder that people have, but there's various levels of severity. But yeah, so it's really kind of. It's actually great to have those kinds of briefs because they're actually really they have to be quite conceptual. Otherwise, it's a bit it's just like a science photograph, which isn't particularly engaging or interesting. So in that sense, they're really great people to shoot for because it was actually they give you a lot of freedom. So. But yeah, so there's subtle hints. So with this, you know, it's very sculptural. There's movement, and it's combs. But so obviously the link is to hair, and there's this kind of double flash movement element that is kind of, I guess, intended to create that sense of unease and kind of tension, where one might be pulling the hair. But yeah, they're quite ambivalent, I guess. So work with me here, guys. Work with me. Yeah, this one maybe is a little bit more descriptive for the pulling. Apologies if you've seen any of these before. But yeah. So again, this was actually another commission, but again, very open in terms of how it could be interpreted. This was for these guys actually, but for I think not that issue. That was a different shoot. So it's if anyone can't see, it's a magazine called Viewpoint, and they explore different themes for each issue. So the colour. This shoot was called Afterlife. So it was all about circular design. So the notion that designers should be thinking about the end product, not the end product, but the final destination of the product, whether that's recycling or putting it in the ground, at the idea conception point. So again, quite an open brief. So yeah, kind of, I guess, difficult to find these sorts of briefs. but and actually get paid for them, because these things that I've shown you aren't particularly well paid, but they're very interesting briefs. But yeah, so there were these moments of transition, kind of the ice melting, the image on the right is there essentially to illustrate natural cellular constructions and kind of looking to nature for these kinds of patterns and sort of ways of emulating them in design. The mushrooms there was this product that they were exploring where it's like a packaging, like a polystyrene, but it's made of like a mycelium, like a fungus. And yeah, so again, like looking to nature for these different patterns and materials. It's a big kind of exploration of materiality. These images are for the forthcoming issue of Syndromes, which is a Danish magazine that explores colour within each theme, with a different colour theme within each issue. I think they've done yellow and red so far, so the next one is white, but the idea is, again, very open brief, so the idea behind it is emptiness. So it's like a totally blank slate, and we were kind of looking into the kind of Eastern, certainly kind of spiritual elements. So and that concept of emptiness and like it being a positive thing. Also death in like Western world. Generally, like, you know, people wear black at a funeral, and it's a very dark, somber thing. Eastern philosophy and religion tends to be light and white, so we were kind of looking into that a little bit to explore, the theme of emptiness, and also just lots of white things, but without being too literal. We didn't want to just paint lots of stuff white, which I think did also happen in that issue. Do paint the walls white. But yeah, and I guess this much softer style is something that I've been exploring a lot more over the last year. I guess my sort of style has evolved quite a lot over the last year and sort of more recent months. And I guess I'm transitioning away slightly from the very rigid constraints of sort of traditional still life photography, or maybe not even traditional, but contemporary. But maybe I don't know where I was like a few years ago. But there is still definitely a graphic element and it's kind of formality. But I'm sort of feeling to break the rules a little bit more now. I probably should have shown this later. And again, here being super organic. This is. It's a shot of daylight, makeshift studio, 35mm.
Can you tell us a little bit about your lighting setup?
Yeah, so this, just sun. The easy one for me to explain. No, so in terms of lighting, so also using daylight quite a lot. So these are shot pretty much of daylight. There's a little bit of flash fill, but balanced. In temperature, although not particularly between those two. It may be more useful for me to. So I use flash a lot. It's kind of my go-to. But from super soft all the way to hard direct flash, like a lot of these will be quite simply lit. So I use kind of trace frames quite a lot. So like with diffusion, and with various different densities of diffusion and but different sources through that. From gridded sort of dish heads to larger sauces. I guess it's probably better for me to be specific about it in terms of specific images, right? I mean here, yeah, so the shutter's open for a few seconds and there's 2 flashes, but they're actually just manually triggered because it was all quite low-fi because of budgets and things. But what have we got going on there? That will most likely be a 4x4 trace frame, quite overhead, off to the left slightly backlit, but overhead. And yeah, quite simple with these. With some of the other stuff later on, I'll be able to give you a bit more because these are, you know, it's like when you know this definitely it's just a big soft sauce. This is more obviously more shaped light, so I would have been using grid sets to really focus the angle of the light, but that will have been softened down a bit with some trace. Yeah, I'd like to kind of feel like things aren't too obvious and you kind of there's a mystery to it. So yeah, I try and be as subtle as I can with adding sources, and even, you know, I mean that is underneath it. You can't really see, but under this is obviously completely black, but there is a bit of fill light in there, but it's very subtle, just really so that it prints. It's not, I don't really want light there, but it's yeah. Yeah, it's not a whole lot like that either. So this is part of that same. Oh no, sorry, a different series. This is to do with catheters. So these conceptual pieces are always accompanied by an essay, which is really great because it means that, again, you can be quite ambiguous about the actual visuals that you're creating because it's kind of explained in the text. There was this notion of home, so like bacteria creating their homes in these tubes, and it's a really, really horrible. I don't know if anyone's ever had a catheter fitted. I haven't. It sounds like a really horrible and traumatic experience, and it's incredibly dangerous. They're incredibly dangerous to leave in because of bacteria basically creating homes inside these tubes, and they can give really horrible diseases to the people, the patients. So anyway, there's a technology that's been developed, which is like this plastic that doesn't allow the bacteria to grow on. So all that isn't explained in these 2 images here. Yeah, and these series. And I guess, yeah, these are quite emblematic of that kind of trying to be a little bit less obvious, but still using visual hints at certain elements that are included, but being non-literal at the same time, I guess. So these are stills which accompany a film that myself and Lisa Yahovich, who is a set designer and art director, we create together. I should show you the film actually now that while we're on this. Maybe I'll show you the film and then we'll cut back to this. Okay. Everyone ready? So that was a completely self-initiated film. We met probably about a year and a half ago to discuss a project together, and it took about 8 months to actually get to the point of shooting it, and then it took maybe not that long actually, 6 months to get to the point of shooting it, and then we shot it, and then there's quite a lot of time in edit. And obviously everything's always alongside paid work, so you know, trying to fit everything in. And also the DOP and editor Lee, you know, it's like trying to get all those 3 people. It's only just 3 people, but trying to get them together amongst other things when not being paid is quite tricky. So it took us quite a long time, but we got it finished and it got shown on Wallpaper. They have an online movie-based platform now, and it was shown on that, which was really great because it was kind of tricky because like, we've made this great film and now where do we go? Yeah, so it was really nice to have them show it and get it out. Yeah, so the stills were shot in tandem. I shot we co-directed it and then shot each shot and then shot the stills afterwards or before, whichever way around it worked, and kind of using the same lighting, so obviously continuous lighting with this. The background of the sky is like a painted background. It's painted on the trace, so that's lit from behind, like sort of backlit. So that was a couple of redheads, like 2K redheads, I think. And we had some LED Fresnel heads, which are really great. LED is amazing. It's quite a new territory for me, but it's awesome for film. Can do a lot with it. And maybe a 2K Fresnel head, I think. Fairly simple, not tons of lighting, but quite a lot of camera movement for the film, certainly. So we had there's dolly track, yeah, quite a bit going on. But yeah, all shot in a room, probably about as big as this one.
Can I ask, did you storyboard it beforehand? Or did you have
yeah, to an extent, but it only really came together in the edit. So we had, and that's actually a really good point because both Lisa and I we've both worked on other film projects in the past. This was, our approach is very much stills based, and so it's kind of okay. So we'll compose for a still and then work around that to create the action. And in terms of it fitting together like a story, yeah, we totally. The idea was that it was. We wanted the protagonist to be a bull. We wanted it to be maybe like an Orwellian journey. So it goes in this bull, and there's this whole sense of scale and shift and all this different stuff. And then there's a sort of narrative in that it goes into where it goes into a pool of other bulls, and it's kind of, you don't know which one it is, and then it's kind of like a cog in the machine. There's kind of a lot of little hints and stuff in there, but a different kind of ideas. But yeah, so it really is in the edit that it comes fully together for me. And so I'll show you a couple of other film things. Maybe I'll just whip through that other PDF first. But they will have different effects. And
do you find those pieces like this, you have to have a strong conceptual written piece? So when you're sending this to someone like Wallpaper, like for me, I like this and I can understand it on a conceptual level, but then I always find that you always have to explain.
Yeah, it definitely was post-rationalised, but there's nothing wrong with post-rationalisation. And it's something that evolves, and I think, you don't always know what a piece of work's going to do or mean or look like when you set out. And I think that's actually also a really important point, because it can stop you from doing and creating work. So many things, you just have to do them and shoot through them. I remember like a really great piece of advice is like, if a shoot's going badly, like, it's like a bank robbery is going badly, you have to shoot your way out of it. And you really do, and it's good advice. You just got to keep going, and it might not make sense even after you're finished, but then when you piece it together, it does. And but yes, having accompanying text is good, but I think you can go overboard with it. I mean, we supplied a kind of a treatment, I guess, like a deck with this when we put it out to people, just as with the stills, and yeah, it does definitely help to have something, because well, in a way, it gives it a story, it gives it a context, because yeah, it's all very well, something looks beautiful and is amazingly shot and has a visual narrative, but if it doesn't have something that they can hang it on, like, I mean, Wallpaper loved it anyway because of how it looked, but it definitely needs a bit of talking up. And that's something that, yeah, is definitely. I mean, it's something that I would consider from the idea conception point, but it also doesn't, as I said, always make sense in the beginning. So let's go back to this.
That shot there, where in the film where all the balls are moving independently.
Yeah, this one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me blowing on the balls with my mouth.
Yeah. Were they sleeper balls or were they?
Some of them are. These ones, the scale is, so this is the whole thing, what we really set out to do was really sort of mess with your perceptions and sense of scale. They are about 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch diameter balls. Some of them are ceramic and some of them are just wooden painted. There's a slight colour shift between them. In the one on the right, they are from the sort of this kind of size down to the same as these, and maybe smaller. The one bottom left on the right, set 4, is sort of that size. The sets are kind of 2 meters square, maybe, but obviously that is forced perspective as well, so it is smaller at the back. So there's quite a lot going on. It's quite didn't make it easy for ourselves, and that the one with the large ball is something like that kind of size.
Did you shoot with macro lenses?
They are. What were we on? So we were shot on the Blackmagic Ursa 2, is it, or 1? Or 1, I think. The one that's not just come out, one before. And they are Zeiss primes. But yeah, one. I think we used the same focal length for everything. I think that was a correct decision, if I am correct. Yeah. Yeah. So they are as a macro 70mm. It's my lens to sensor crop ratio in film isn't particularly up to date because I'm more focused on the stills. But I basically just asked the DOV to match so like a 120mm lens on a medium format would be something like that at this sort of scale. So I sort of it's a bit of working out. Yeah, I think it's 70. I feel like that was a 70mm, but it's just like a 70mm macro. But yeah, the sensor sizes obviously on the Blackmagic is something like I don't really know, but it's smaller than 35 now, I believe. It's not like
season.
yeah. Another self-initiated brief, same crew. So this is actually also going to be a film, but we're still in the sort of final stages of the edit. Have sound, but it isn't all being pieced together. But these are just some of the stills. It's called Transients. So it was actually a good point, actually, in terms of like the reference to a concept and things like that. It was initially intended to be about the refugee crisis or the global migration crisis, and it's actually moved away from that a little bit because it felt wrong. It felt like it wasn't the right thing to illustrate that. So anyway, but what I mean is that, you know, it doesn't always, what you set out to do doesn't always end up being the thing that it is, and vice versa. So anyway.
I'd ask if you've always been interested in video and how, or film, and where would you...
I used to sneak into my friends' film studies classes in A-level in my free periods. Just like watching movies, but yeah, it's a natural. For me, it's a natural, not transition, because I don't feel like it is a transition. It's the same thing. It's just the pictures move and there's action that you're capturing in a different way. Because in my still photography, like, I feel like I'm capturing action a lot of the time. There's movement in them. As much as there are still images. So yeah, it feels totally natural. When I was like full-time assisting, I did quite a bit of camera assisting with a really great DOP who's done, he's doing amazing stuff. And he was really hands-on, and I was sort of thrown right into it, and it was really great. And that was a huge learning experience. But actually, technology, like even camera technology moves on so fast, even in that time, that it's kind of like, I'm a little bit out of the loop with it, and hence working with a DOP, you have that technical support, so it can be quite good. But yeah, it's great to have had that technical understanding, and in a way the creative understanding. I guess if that answers the question, it was natural. Whether I set out to do that in the first time, I mean, I don't know if I really set out what I set out to do in the first point, so yeah, maybe. But it definitely feels like the right territory. So I guess, this is maybe feels a little bit more relevant to what I was saying about kind of the traditional contemporary approach to contemporary still life. So very graphic, very I guess very composed, but without trying to be too composed. You may remember these skies from the Impossible House project. But this was another interesting one, because it actually began life as a part of a product editorial. So like the set on the left is actually a set from a product story for maybe Esquire magazine. I believe there was a shoe perched on that ball. But it was one of those ones where the set designer herself had spent so much time painting all these things, and like it seemed like such a great thing in its own right. And so we kind of finished the shoot and then carried on and shot like a set of 5 of these, and then we painted all the props again in a different set of colours. So we did an orange set, a blue set, and those colours are not quite right. So it was kind of an exercise in colour theory. It was essentially we set ourselves limitations. So like 5 colours of a palette, set number of props, and kind of just had fun with compositions and created these bizarre worlds. And I guess this sort of thing is great. I know this initially happened because of a product-based editorial, but actually often I'll create work like this that actually is great for advertising clients, it's great for editorial clients, because they're like, oh great, well you can throw some products in there, and then that's like a sort of paid for page in a mag. So it's good to have these tangents. I mean, I don't set out to create work like that, but it is often the case that people say, oh, you know, we could put our thing in there, and that's then kind of has commercial value as well as being an art piece, which is always a good thing to bear in mind. Staying with the trend of self-commissioned editorial, this was actually shot as a result of a cosmetics commission, which we had a whole load of flowers and beautiful things left over, and they were just being used as shadows. I'll show you actually what they were used for, but basically to create dappled light. So it was a horrendous waste. So we created this body of work, which actually then did get published in Rakesprogress magazine, which is a lovely magazine. It's kind of based around gardening and kind of plants, but it's a very kind of contemporary take on it. It's really cool to check it out. And they don't have huge budgets, and they take work that they like, that's self-commissioned. So it's not something that I know a lot of the work that I've just shown you is that of that ilk, but historically I've not found that as being a particularly good way of getting work published, creating it and then showing it to people. But there are the odd occasions where it does work, and it's really nice because, you know, you've already made the work and you were totally free in doing that, and then actually if it fits the style of a magazine or it fits the theme of an issue, that could be really nice. And yeah, but not for getting paid. Okay, I'm going to quickly I'm going to show you a much more commercial portfolio. How we do? This is a recent campaign for Debenhams, which was a social media campaign, and it was all formats. So it was in their shop windows and all their stores, and online social media. Pretty interesting brief in that it was kind of showing product in their store, but in these kind of constructed worlds, illustrating the concept. Maybe I should show you the treatment for this before I show you the final images. I'm just going to carry on. But so these were also animated GIFs, which were for their social platforms, because it's apparently much more engaging content. So they move. I can show you them in a second as well. This was an early campaign many years ago for Dr. Martens, which was actually also an animated thing. So I don't have these actually, but their hands move up and down, and the shoe is a clean piece of concrete, and it falls and smashes the concrete, and bits fly off. A car drives past, and the shadow moves. Another fairly early advertising piece for Wenger, which is possibly a brand no one's ever heard of. It's kind of Victorinox, they bought them out, but it's like they're slightly lower price point. But luggage and watches. So yeah, I don't know if you might have technical questions on these. I don't know. But.
How did you get your first commercial work job?
So that's actually probably one of my first commissions, like advertising commissions, which I got through. It was with Harriman Steel, who are now based in Amsterdam. They were based just up there, Oxford Square. I went in to meet them because I had I haven't got them. Maybe I think I've even taken them off the website. I did like a test shoot with some watches, but they were from they were like fake watches from like Ridley Road Market, and so they're like these big plastic watches that look totally ridiculous. But I shot them not really so much in an environment like this, but in a sort of a constructed set environment. So one looked like a Prada kind of campaign, one looked like a I don't know, like a heavier kind of more masculine brand. But they looked the sets were so great that the watches actually, you didn't notice that they were really shit fake, really, like bad fakes, not just like fake watches, but really bad, like with glitter glue and things. So, and it, you know, because that for me was like a funny way of like shooting watches. I never shot watches for a brand or for an editorial client even. And it was a way of kind of demonstrating the skill set that I had from all of this information and all of these skills that I've learned for assisting, but doing it for real, but for myself, but for not for anything. So I showed, and I had like, so I'd got my little portfolio together, and I went in to see them because I'd worked with them assisting another photographer probably on the Victronauts actually, yeah, so on the higher tier of job. Yeah, so pretty much all my work has been from that kind of meeting creatives or art buyers on other jobs with other people assisting, and not trying to show them my portfolio on the job or being, it's obviously like you've got to sort of tread carefully in that area, but yeah, I mean, I've never sort of done anything like that in a kind of sly kind of way. But you know, if you make contact with people, it's literally as simple as being nice to people and being friendly and being yourself, and people remember you for that. And when you do make contact, when you have got your stuff together, like that's an open door, and that was how that job came about. So I went in and I showed them these watches, and then it was fairly quickly after that this job came in for them, and they thought of me. And yeah, a lot of luck, but you know, timing, coincidence. But most of my work, Dr. Martens, that was I assisted a photographer, totally unrelated to the sort of work I do. But yeah, really nice guy, James Pearson House. He shoots portraiture and social documentary. He shot the mainline campaigns for Dr. Martens, which were all like real people, casts, wedding DMs. And I worked with them intensively with Odd, another little creative agency, rapidly growing. Yeah, and they were my friends, and we got on really well, and they you know, threw this my way. This was through Mother. I don't know quite how it happened. I'm not sure, but I'd worked with Mother before, and I knew them, and I guess they knew of me. This was just mates with David Beckham, and he endorses that, not really. It was a friend at RGA, the other advertising agency who represents Haig, and yeah, it was ended up being quite a big job. It was a week shoot. It was, again, a social campaign though, so or social media. Which is an interesting point to maybe discuss, because like budgets and like how things are structured in terms of the difference between print advertising, traditional out-of-home print advertising money, and like social media money, and the different tiers of what you can get paid for things. It's really changing a lot because of social media. Like, is really the biggest like outlet. It's where most stuff gets seen. Everyone's on their phone. Value is still in like billboard out-of-home advertising, but it's something that is, you know, like 2 years ago, say, if you got us to do a social media campaign, it would be like, oh, you know, the money's not going to be very, it's just for social. Well, that's kind of changing, and like for good reason, because, you know, to produce work that is at the level that it needs to be the same level as something that's going to be printed out of home. Yeah, maybe the resolution doesn't need to be as big, but it needs to be at the same quality. So in terms of production, you know, the budgets need to be the same. and the usage, like, it's calculated based on, I guess, how many people see it. It is all still quite mysterious to me, I will admit, but yeah, it's changing because of the internet. The internet's changed everything. So, just a transgression.
What's your input on the look of this set, on the colour, on the material?
So it will have been, I'm trying to remember, this would have been quite prescribed. So like the blues and the whites are like very much related to the product. It kind of.
But do you choose it or somebody else?
Like from the ad agency. So the creative director or art director who. But they didn't really constantly. I'm trying to think back. It's just quite a while ago. I don't know if I've got a brief. I'll see if I can dig out. I wonder if I've got it.
Like, I guess what I'm asking, when you come to shoot, this has been selected for you, or you?
The bottle, or do you mean the set?
No, not the bottle, the marble.
Yeah. So that was something that I actually. Yeah, I mean, we're the set designer, but we actually went together looking for bits of marble. So like those sorts of things. I mean, that's not often the case. It would probably be the set designer that would source all these things, but I think on that occasion we did it together. I had a free day. But yeah, it's all elements. Some will be from the agency, some will be from. But it can totally be the opposite to that. You know, it could be complete. There's another little film that I'll show you in a bit, which was pretty much completely from. It was a very loose reference, a couple of loose references, and then it was myself and the set designer.
But now that you more like probably have your style, do they ask for your input on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most recent pitch that I was pitching for this week, they had loose concept, but they wanted my take on it. So I've still been doing that and trying to win the job. But yeah, but I worked with set designer, who's my first choice for that.
Sketches?
Yeah, sketches. First time I've really had to do sketches for an advertising brief. But they're based in China, and I think they really like my work. They like what I do, but they wanted me to. So they wanted input. So. Yeah, it's really nice to have that. I found it quite difficult on this brief because it was already quite prescribed what they want. It was quite they have quite a house style, or the brand identity is quite set. So they wanted me to use my. I mean, it sounds really cheesy, some of the words, but. Magic and whimsical, beautiful images, and my take on it. But basically asking me to be creative, which is really nice to be asked to do that, because often you don't. Often with advertising, it's very set. And I mean that can be a really great element to it, because you know exactly what you're doing, and you know there's always things that come up that problems that are to be solved or creative decisions to be made. But yeah. So yeah, in this case, yes, but it always is different. Yeah.
And just that, so do you think consciously now that you're trying to create an image that people recognize, knowing
as my own?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, but I guess with advertising work, it's difficult. It can be difficult to do that. But there's something that I will show you that is definitely much more my own thing. I mean, these are. Yeah, I don't know. They're not massive. I mean, these are all out now. They're all live. So they were a year ago. Okay. So that's actually it for them. But what I was talking about. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't it. You think it's over? Yeah. So I've rushed through those. Interesting, but. This is for Time magazine. This was a fun one. This was for the Philharmonia Orchestra, so it was on the Tube, like probably 2 years ago, maybe more now, but advertising the classical music series at the South Bank Centre. But
so how do you do that?
To illustrate the moment of crescendo. Crescendo was the brief. How do I do that? Just magic. A lot of fishing wire. They were all constructed like that. They weren't just fishing wire, and some bits will be on little sticks with magic arms and C-stands, and it'd actually be great if I could just show you the unretouched versions, because it's quite funny. But yeah, so and then that will all be shot with all the stuff holding it, and then we'll then shoot clean set options, so you can retouch out the things you don't want, and but you're not creating texture. So you keeping a clean set is shooting clean set plates is obviously integral to that process, because you're not kind of like making up information, you're just taking away and then revealing what's behind. So quite complex layering processes, but yeah, which I generally only brief for now. I don't actually enjoy it particularly, so I use professional retouchers for that things. This was actually an editorial thing. This was for a vodka brand, but they have this quite iconic bottle. It's like a milk bottle, and they had this range of, it's vodka, so they had these range of infusions that they add to the vodka, and they kind of commissioned me to do a series of images that sort of tie those two worlds together, basically. And this was all built for real. This is all shot as it is. So yeah, lots of focus plates and stacking and kind of watch feature for some 70s retro watch feature for Esquire. Watch shoots. Really. I quite enjoy shooting them like this at this scale, sort of fitting frame, but I've done so many where you have to kind of shoot 5 or 6 watches across a double page spread and sort of somehow make them magically all work together, and it's tricky and a lot less satisfying. So it's a lot of technical challenges, but kind of rewarding.
Have you always shot digital, or did you start? Did you still like career by shooting?
Still life has always been digital. I shot a lot of film when I was a student, and from large format. Yeah, I played around on 5.4 quite a lot. I think it's really important. It really gives you a great technical grounding, because if it doesn't work, you don't get the picture, and it slows you down. Like I was using Hasselblad a lot. I mean, I use a Hasselblad now. Some of these watch campaigns I've used like technical cameras, like Sinar or Linhof 679, but always with a digital back or the phase back. But yeah, I'm really glad that the analog education was there when I was starting out, because it was they don't do it at all now on that course, I believe, which is a real shame. I'm not a classicist in that sense. I'm not tied to the nostalgia of film or anything like that. But it's just in terms of learning, it's I think it's a great process. So, but it's more actually the cameras and like the technical movements of a a 5x4 camera, which are useful both with digital and analog. But obviously lenses are all have been changed and upgraded to work with digital backs because they respond to light in a different way to film. So yeah. The flowers that I was talking about that we photographed and ended up being used for the Rakesprogress were used for this, which was so yeah, in terms of film, the Dr. Martens thing was probably like the first animated thing that I did for a client. It was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And yeah, I guess then I've done a few things that are GIF based, stop motion, and it's great because you can achieve quite a lot with not that much. You can use your same team as you would on a stills. It is a still shoot, but you're just shooting a lot more actual images. But obviously it's a totally different look, and you can't. Well, you can do camera movements, but it gets quite complicated. It can be great for things like high speed, where you need the level of resolution and you need the level of let's say like flash duration that you could really only achieve if you were shooting on like a what do you call it, phantom, or like a mirror, so like 2,000 frames a second film, but then you need like a light as big as the sun because you need it for the frame rates. And and that costs a hell of a lot of money to even have the equipment, let alone the teams to run all the equipment. So it's appealing in that sense, and they're fun. It's fun to make, fun to do GIF stuff, but it's often underestimated. Like the same with the Debenhams thing. You know, the GIFs were the thing that took probably the longest on each of the shoot days, but really they were an add-on, you know, to the concept, to the print campaign. So again, it sort of touches on like how the industry's changing and slowly adapting to the new media. This was so these, I'll just play it, but it's a cinematograph, so it's a static camera set exactly the same position as my stills camera, but shot as moving image. As such, the lighting was all continuous lighting, and yeah, so it's just a very subtle bit of movement. There's no sound. So yeah, I mean, there's just a lot more frames. So each of those frames you have to capture takes time. Sorry, but
do you have an animatic to it?
An animatic. Sorry, I don't even know what that is. Forgive me.
Like a rough idea of how many frames you can.
Oh yeah. So for frame rate, I think it's something like 12 frames a second for it to look fairly smooth. So yeah, and there were 3 seconds for the action. I think they're like 5 second. How long's that? 6 seconds. Yeah. So it's quite a lot of shots. I mean, some of these were like, this was pretty much all the frames were shot as they are, because of the shadows. You get. I'll show you again. You see the shadows in the background, things like that. So that all had to be shot for real, and obviously interaction. Whenever there's interaction with one thing and another, they have to be shot for real. One that didn't have to do that, but actually also was a lot of time and a lot of shots, and because it was shooting product in different positions, for it to look real and not sort of just a comp. I mean, it was a massive comp, but I mean, yeah, I didn't work on these. These are an animator, retouchers, and an animator who created these. But so you got camera movement and product movement. So it was quite. I mean, you know, it's hard to sort of appreciate it in the 3 seconds, but it was a lot that went into it. So that's like the still, and then So all of these are attached to rods, which had to then be moved and twisted, so because obviously they move in, not just in up and down, but they move in just to make it feel natural, so as if they've bounced on the trampoline. So you get a subtle bit of side to side movement with some of them. So yeah, basically there's quite a lot that goes into a GIF. It's like, or can be. Yeah. Bored of these yet? It's quite fun. Like paper or card kind of set, and then. Oh, sorry. That appeared quite quickly, didn't it? A natural born thriller. Quite like little butterflies at the end there. But you know, these sorts of things you can add. You can give what you can give, but at the end of the day, there's a concept that's been prescribed by someone else that you are working to, which is you know, is also really nice. Sometimes can be quite refreshing when you really are problem solving rather than necessarily creating. But I do enjoy that side of things. It's quite a fluid motion there with the car, so there's a lot of frames, but it was quite a simple one, so we could. Oh, I actually wrote a list of things that I was going to talk about here. Yeah. So yeah, finding your own aesthetic, finding your own voice. I think it's always evolving, and you're always looking for it, always, you know, perfecting it, always changing. But I think, as I said earlier, you really just have to keep shooting, and you have to keep following what you want. The final point on there actually is there was a press photographer who I was talking to years and years and years ago when I was still a student, and yeah, I just said, you know, what can you offer any advice? And she said, quite simply, love your subject. And I kind of read that, I think, probably the wrong way for a long time, and it's only really made sense now. But yeah, just love what you do, and if you don't love it, don't do it. Do something else.